Let me first start off by saying this is probably going to be the only time I talk about this person on my channel, and what a fitting time to actually do it than with a triple P. Now, if it wasn't for the LDBC, and shout out to them by the way, I would not have any clue who this guy was. And unless you are a boxing fan, you won't know who this is either. But by the time I get through this video, or even halfway through it, you're gonna realize that one, this guy's a complete and utter jackass. Two, he's a staunch racist. And three, he got exactly what he deserved. Now, in case y'all don't know who this is Paulie Malinagi. But I used to always have trouble pronouncing his name, so I used to always call him Milk of Magnesium. And that's what we're going to refer to him today, because it's a triple P, so you know we got to be extra petty with it. You know I love a good nickname. So what's going on with Milk of Magnesium? Well, apparently he's overstepped his boundaries a little bit too far this time, to the point where the network in which he used to work for, which was Showtime, had no other choice but to fire him. This guy, for some reason, has a complete and utter disdain towards black boxers in particular. And from what I've heard, it's because he used to always get his ass whooped by black boxers, and one of the boxers in which he did fight not only beat his ass in the ring, but also took his woman. And I have a feeling that could have been a triggering point for him. Now I'm gonna go ahead and read this article coming from the shadowleague.com, and we're going to figure out exactly why and what he said that got him fired. Paulie the Magic Man Milk of Magnesium Malinagi is known for his over-the-top statements. The former two-time world champion was recently fired by Showtime for comments he made months ago in rebuke of current world champion Devin Haney, who happens to be black. I just added that in there. Paulie's comments during an interview with IFL TV has cost him his broadcast analyst job. Now, mind you, he's getting fired from comments he made months ago. It's not recent. According to Boxing Scene, Paulie refused a request from Viacom CBS to apologize for his comments and was subsequently fired. Keep that part in mind right there. Viacom CBS. We're going to revisit that, and I think y'all know where I'm headed with it. Paulie was responding to comments made by current WBC lightweight title holder Devin Haney, 24-0, 15 knockouts. Back in April, Haney stated that he never let a white boy beat me. That's when Paulie headed down a path to Showtime oblivion. And they even broke it up into sections. This section is called When the Foot Meets the Mouth. He probably wasn't talking about Vasily Lomachenko, Paulie said. I assume he was talking about Luke Campbell, who I think is the more viable opponent that he would be fighting. When you're in your early 20s, you probably don't express that very well. It's not something that's great to make racial statements in 2020, especially with so many racial tensions in the world and whatnot. Boxing has had its course in history with certain demographics dominating more than others, right? Paulie said in a video, maybe like 100 years ago, Irish fighters were better, and then the Jews and then the Italians came in. I think the African American fighter became the most dominant. It's great to have the race discussion because it's to coordinate division before stating, I don't know if Devin got the memo. It's no longer the time of the African American anymore in boxing. Those were his words. He basically says that black people in boxing don't really have a place anymore. Now, mind you, Paulie is an Italian. Italians have only held on to that white status for like the last 100 or so years. They're what you call the new white. Then, of course, after them, you might have the white Hispanic who came after them. It's the Eastern Europeans that has become the dominant species in boxing. I think stating something like Haney's statement, that could be very dangerous. Now, he might as well just said himself, because if my geographic mental is correct, I want to say that Italy is in Eastern Europe. I could be wrong. I don't have a map on hand. However, here is where it got costly for Paulie, as he was baited by the reporter with the lead up to a question: if a white fighter has said that about a black fighter, that I'll never lose to a black boy, that we'd be outright calling them racist and the reaction will be much bigger. And Paulie ended up taking the bait. I try not to join in the race conversations. This is one of the exact examples of why I don't believe there is racial oppression in 2020 or in this century. Yes, he said that. Mind you, in this century is the last 100 years. So, according to him, there was no stop and frisk. There was no Jim Crow. There was no redlining. There was no civil rights movement. There wasn't any police brutality. There was no 3 strikes. None of that. Now, mind you, Paulie is Italian himself, and I could have sworn at one point in time Italians were actually seen as N-words at one point until they got the Caucasoid status, and then they weren't that anymore. So at one point, Paulie, with you being Italian, at one point, your people were being oppressed within the 100 years in the century that you claim it didn't exist. He says, I believe there has been, sure, but I don't believe there is racial oppression today. I believe it is all made up, and I believe that it is exaggerated. This is exactly one of the reasons why. The fact that a black fighter can say that, not pay any price financially, but if a white fighter said that about any black fighters at all, he'd probably lose his TV contract and probably TV networks wouldn't touch him. I won't tell you that it's a double standard, but I'll tell you that it does prove that the entire whole hypothesis of racial oppression is exaggerated in this century. I don't think this century has given us anything aside from any situations people want to nitpick. Paulie probably had this coming. Although his latent post-racial outlook is new information, his incredulous certainty is not. From spitting on Artem Lobov during the lead up to his bare-knuckle fighting championships debut, to his ever-evolving off-the-cuff ignorant comments that are his trademark, Paulie, milk of magnesium, has consistently kept it gutter. Showtime is known for its pristine production and clean presentation. Although at the commentator's desk he shines, outside that platform he has always been a smudge on their clean shirt. Paulie had been a Showtime analyst since 2012 in September. According to the Boxing Scene, the network is working on a severance agreement while he is off the air. Now look at that. They are willing to pay this man even after he got fired. So they're still taking care of him. Keep in mind, Viacom CBS. However, he remains an analyst for Sky Sports boxing coverage in the United Kingdom. Then did he really suffer is the question. He just got fired from this particular job, which I'm guessing it was a huge bread and butter for him. The Showtime boxing team is a diverse group of entertainment veterans. Showtime Sports president of sports and event programming Steven Espinoza is a Mexican-American. David Dinkins Jr. is the senior vice president and executive producer of Showtime Productions on the Showtime network. Dinkins Jr. oversees all production of boxing and mixed martial arts telecasts and is the proud son of New York City's first African-American mayor, David Dinkins Sr. Showtime Sports and Premier Boxing Champions unveiled a 9-event television lineup for the remainder of 2020 in a virtual press conference on July 22nd. The schedule is the largest collection of World Championship boxing announced since the virus pandemic forced a stoppage to the sport. According to The Athletic, former 4-time 3-division World Boxing Champion Abner Mares will replace Paulie. During the week of June 25th, Mares became an American citizen through a drive-through naturalization ceremony in Los Angeles. Look at that. He's getting replaced by a person that just became Americanized a month ago, about a little over a month ago. Showtime's usual broadcast with Hall of Famer announcer Al Bernstein and Mauro Ranallo at the desk, and Brian Custer at the host desk, and Jim Gray doing the in-ring and backstage interviews. I don't feel absolutely anything for milk of magnesium, because like I said, I have never ever heard one good thing about this guy. Every time I saw his name come up from people who I'm subscribed to who are into boxing, they never had anything good about him at all to say. Now, remember I told y'all to keep Viacom CBS in mind. Now, Viacom CBS, apparently it sounds like to me they own Showtime. And Paulie has been known to say some very inflammatory things over the years. Like, this is nothing new. They've been talking about him for years, but they're just now getting him out of there, and they're still covering for him with a severance package. Meanwhile, and I know some of y'all are going to hate that I bring this up, but I have to in this context. When Nick Cannon said what he said, Viacom CBS was ready to cancel him immediately. Oh, I know what it was. It's because they felt offended by what he said. And apparently what Paulie was saying about black people wasn't offensive to them. Are y'all still sure out there listening that the quote unquote J community is our friend? So they let this Paulie milk of magnesium get away with saying stuff about black people for years. Or at least for a long minute. But Nick Cannon said something that's not even remotely offensive about them, and they cancel him literally in that same week. I mean, I know I'm not the only one that made that correlation, but I'm gonna leave that where it is. Y'all can come up with your own conclusion. But as far as this guy goes, he got exactly what he deserved. In my opinion, it took too damn long based on things I've always heard about him. He should have been gone a long time ago, but he didn't piss off the top people. They like, you can talk about anybody else, but you better not say shit about us, because at the end of the day, we are the ones that sign your check. So make sure you stay in your lane and all will be good.